Hello, dear Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They recorded themselves, the FBI and other agencies, various ways, even too when they try to deny it because they're involved with interbranch switching and forging names where there are predicate acts methods. Manifest our country's A through Z. Forgiveness is so we could talk about this, so we could communicate about this, so that we could discern how the branches of government at countries A through Z are used remotely as locations, areas, and states that are the only ones that could operate the phenomenon of the individual species body of bodies. And I mean our country's name. But in other words, first on Twitter there are obscure pictures that the FBI have roles with after they already have a principal obscure nature in jail who is recorded with other worse natures of digital crimes and federal evidences crimes and relative delusions, including medical crimes, including sexual ones, and including with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same exact time. People involved with body dumping spots, intercities. These are people increasingly that had roles directly and indirectly within those names that planted evidence on my street since I was a little kid. Whole bunch of ways. And as roles with names with all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts themselves and their family members and the lawyers and their family members, their sources with the same sequence shifts, timed collusions with news too. WFSB has me in a fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center attack. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have a whole bunch of names next to themselves, involved with people intercities on off the campuses through time, involved with other past proven child abusers leaders too, first forced that they had roles with, and more recorded now. A Michelle Sandquist recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a people with a Lena's Pizza on Park Street and a Lance Cuddy involved. Also with people involved with the former Mayor Gold and other former mayors and conjunctions to them involved with foreign and domestic, medical and sexual, family and military, all kinds of natures of organized crimes with them. And not legitimately. At Hartford Hospital, they run into high live progressions with their patient, with their doctors, even if they're undercover, with their doctors and judges and prosecutors speaking fake things into records. A bunch of people involved with the Phil Colo are further involved with people on my street involved with him. And a Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics, recorded and confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with the news locations and people on Ridge Road and conjunctions to Ridge Road and corners on that street, involved with many others, involved like a Mark Violet, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with judges and prosecutors and people next to the state capitol with an O'Brien family near me. We're involved with multiple police departments and a Colo family near me and other people with the Weathersfield Police Department through time involved. They attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult. They increasingly have collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with the kids that did go down there and speak with them. And it's not legitimately with their acting professors and unmarked police forms. They have roles refusing to identify themselves interbranch for a long time. They're lying about and changing what we say online because they have criminally pointable readings of statutes and precedents together, individually grouped and together, that the branches of government were shown some they need to hide simultaneously while the overt criminal enterprises and terrorists were too, and countries individually grouped and together. This breaching method knew that all groupings of countries that would have to come about to try to counter the fact even nature quiet aspects in nature of possession slash hyper possession that were causing negative value nature progression exponential they couldn't counter without staying stuck. I'm worse than mother. Not no, excuse me. So we need to have a new nature. Swears too. That means different like badios. Could mean bullshit. Excuse my language. And or the word. or you could call a person that, but it doesn't mean bullshit. Just means like that nonsense that's criminal insidiousness nature of it, or hyper criminal insidiousness nature of it. A breaching method clearer than day, designed other things, others a method to keep other things, others ourselves, blamed for itself and what it causes, and that further rolls with that caused, which was hyper additional, but it was timed collusion slash S, where no one was even paying attention to that, and no one is. So they have inside the nature of debate, and people want to speak about positive or negative, what they think about other people. You guys are changing our own words outside of interbranch locations. Originally and still, American history is about how they still have criminally foreign influence collusion slash S. The difference of their guilt or of the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, even when they're not in the same cases, they have recorded time collusion slash S with differences racketeering worse than war crimes. It has been so long that people are a phenomenon of people breaching method shows people that don't even know each other and the difference of that. But they have to use their own differences and other people's differences, including sexual, religious. In other words, one thing that everyone missed, whether they're countering it and hate it or whether they're for it, using the use of the word Holocaust. Because right through world wars, psychiatry had roles, just concentrated, but they have collusion slash S with all natures of crime scenes where the courts still have collusions that have not been addressed the way our founders communicated for us to address them, like where and how and why. George Washington had to come with the plan of the counter extortion to Webb House at Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, though. With still with other communicated for James Madison than he communicated for himself and for the founders behind him. I read that we were directed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison singular. Instead, there are the breaching method measured and maintained self-valued roles with readings with knowledge of good and evil of history out of sequence. And so, for example, so they could keep people pretending passions and emotions, not about the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. So dysfunctionally, as liars pretending other, trying to look for examples of lie. In other words, the way the breaching method knew they would, as collusion slash S with recorded use slash S of predicate acts with facts stuck into the databases of all ages, natures of campuses, all natures and relationships between people and next to them, or conjunctive to them, rather. But and next, so it's been so long like that, and the difference of it's next to it too, though. In other words, at corners of streets in Wethersfield, Connecticut, where our people on up the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices, increasingly planting and having planted roles of various natures of organized crimes and federal evidences crimes, identity thefts, and frauds, with people like with where Maxwell Drive is, off of Route 3. Increasingly has Wethersfield Police Department, Rocky Hill Police Department, New England Police Department, Newington Police families, involved with retired Wethersfield police chiefs in intimate ties with the same house, and one's tied to them. Involved with foreign and domestic military, too, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with doctors and their family members, affecting and having affected confessions and demonstrations to me on my area from when they're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with people at other countries and at the bordering states who come to campuses like Central Connecticut State University, involved with methods that were entrenched before America's founders were born, and houses that were built before they were born, with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, and in the north, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. No, enslaved in the same house as the people, and they didn't want the size, so they wanted to build better then. Wider, safer, a different identity. But the Indians, all that. That's all that. All those narratives were criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influenced. And it's not just me saying that. We could observe this because sickly distinctly, it was the northern and southern possessions of people and of countries themselves possessed by a method that came from some ancient times. This is what Vladimir Putin was speaking about before he was cut off in an interview with Tucker Carlson, which anyone could have made that mistake because there's a lot of pressure all of a sudden there. And part of the reason he made that mistake is because that campus is A through Z. A breaching method measures and maintains that other is being and has been communicated for James Madison and for our founders behind him and his plan. That then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan. The experts on sciences are using their knowledge of good and evil with the other names of the sciences like the law to get over on us, to keep us from appreciating James Madison's plan and the extortion of George Washington. Now we had to come to counter-extort everyone else. And so they're screening how the slavery was entrenched, involved with why and how witch trials place. There's a witch trials place manifest right where they have the Webb Stevens house, again, renamed from Webb House to keep the nature of debate about that, involved as a means to sense and sensibilities being contained, having been valued, self-valued, collusion /S at all ages and natures of crime scenes, at all sides of everybody's house, at all sides of parks. These are people, this is a method that showed all natures of investigators, and their campuses' names, etc. They have to, they can't afford that quality of fact treatment nature. That they have to hide roles with, like, for example, when we were young, we have black people's whites of eyes to be able to discern predicate acts with facts. This is what the president try to say, who are white but fail, distinctly from presidents labeled black. But you guys have failed because you guys have left out how we have black people's whites of eyes. And because how the locations, areas, and states are forcing you, preventing you from having a quality of fact treatment nature allowed to protract, unobstructed, changed. And as collusion /S with the relativity of that being and having been faked, as predicate acts with facts, methods /S roles at all ages and natures of campuses. Per use /S of that also manifests. But there are layers of uses of it from that singular breaching method use. That is the subject. I mean, that is what witch trials are inseparable from the subject of slavery this way, with a witch trials placed next to the Webb House, where George Washington had to come to counter-extort right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, where there had been internationally monitored conversations that had not just the slavery, and this had been sustained against countries A through Z while they were founded too, from some age since before religious messengers were born. The campuses, and the exceptions that it is demonstrable that they appreciate it as themselves /S. They follow how there is an identity that shows us there are a whole totally distinct species bodies of individual bodies that have their own group differences, distinct from our own, but also non-distinct and simultaneous /hyper simultaneous / that which is not us nor them, but is anyway. that which has all these distinct bodies with two eyes. See, we have not appreciated this because the readings of the religious books, of the sciences, of the sports, of comedy, of as jobs, for example, as industries. Everyone has styles and natures of logic, changing and faking what people say outside of interbranch locations. And digital, changing and faking digital evidences. But people have been doing that with wire crimes, with the agencies. A bunch of people tied to the names Scalora, DeMoro, and Cololo have multiple agencies in foreign and domestic military and other and intelligence involved with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and campuses with people stacking predicate acts with facts into databases and with news and with the names next to them and their roles with the Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices and with the Weathersfield Police Facebook page. They have people with the name Schumack. Joshua Schumacher sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He's going to pretend other, but he's involved with people with burning intelligence and people with some interreligious and intercampuses, sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, frauds roles with people with where the Weathersfield police are now, where they used to be. Also with retired police chiefs and their intimate ties from Weathersfield. Like a police chief, Cintron, is also involved with lawyers involved with this. So the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court is also involved with rape threats and then making a whole bunch of different Facebook pages. Ones with the name KNERR. These are also people involved with people with the name KERR, planting evidence on all sides of my house. And that people involved with Central Connecticut State University with the different departments and the different industries, offensively involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against complete strangers. And not, in other words, sequenceships, as people involved with the FBI Director Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members, with former Dean Judd and his family members, and with a whole bunch of people from Weathersfield that were at Newington and West Hartford and New Britain locations, involved with the ones on my street, increasingly involved with wire crimes at Weathersfield police that faked conversations with me when I was a kid and now when I'm an adult. And it's based on their roles with the corrections office and judicial branch offices, also with names next to campuses, also involved with security of the schools, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Many people involved with, in many ways, with the Institute of Living on the campus of Hartford Hospital, have roles with the names of business, with the businesses and houses next to it too, involved with Weathersfield Police through time, and with overt criminal enterprises, with people on my street, involved with them also with home break-ins and with their educators putting fake things in databases. There's a Leahy family that faked conversations with me, and they have roles in the Anthony Agman and some Mendez police, involved with the Weathersfield Police Station and next to the Hartford, next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut. And they have roles with a bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with Two Rod Highway and its conjunctions, where it runs into Hagdog Lane, for example, in the Borough Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. These are a bunch of probate court judges concentrated with the same house, involved with wire crimes, acts and methods with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders through time. But it's also superior court judges and prosecutors and their family members who have time collusion /S with multiple first force child abusers, leaders of the kids' roles, and more recorded involved. Also, how they're forced, tricked, and persuaded to roll, even when they're punished by the same bodies semi-involved because other foreign bodies were involved. Increasingly, a Delfair family. Years later, I had to call this guy because I know his name. I never saw his kids on campus. He has roles with probate court judges with their families and other probate court judges' family members. They take part with identity thefts, frauds, including ones as intimate ties, and they do it with the people around everyone too. So they keep everyone calling other names or liking each other, or good or bad descriptions. They use either one because these are keeping other identities of relativity involved. and the identity of relativity of the breaching method from our discernment. The same way computers work, where everything has relativity, positive and negative, simultaneously, slash hyper simultaneously, not just with neutrality or slash neutralizing. For example, the Trinity. There are 1/3/5 ways. 3 parts of time are grouped by one way. And we'll examine this. But it has to do with some ways. For example, true all ways. The laws were valued as a human fact, human nature breaching method. And roles with that were only allowed, only permitted, only fathomable. And that had been sustained. And that caused bad things in nature's action and demonstrations of it by nature. But also now contained roles with it. So that also contained bad things, acts, and demonstrations of it by nature. And the breaching method knew it could hide behind it, while as its roles with this and that. But it knew that nature would continue to demonstrate that. And so it has this measured out as a tactically denatured at countries A through Z, suits and ties, counters, exceptions, above, infrastructure with quality aspects of nature that were designed for the torture, extortion, factory nature, slavery of Native Americans, of colonists, and of what will come as states. Since before, it was through the phases, it maintained complete possession / hyper-possession of our founders' communications to us, even though it's declassified. In other words, and this has replaced nature's communications to us. I understand that why and how President Trump's trying to do damage control and say, okay, let's say we have to put America first. Where and how he doesn't allow, and where and how he may, I don't know, appear to be bullying off anyone with the quality of fact human nature that needed to we have to appreciate that because that's true. We have to appreciate where and how we don't even have possession of our name yet. Everyone who's speaking about America as being fake. We have not addressed why we have black pupils, whites of eyes. We have lawyers all sides of cases in the courts themselves, used remotely, criminally foreign influence, predicate acts with facts, way worse than the crimes they're putting people in jails for. Jails involve all kinds of natures of organized crime, delusions, criminally foreign influence. They're gonna pretend they're gonna corrections of people. They're making up stuff about people into databases. Then they need to pretend about the corrections of people. They're not even putting writing down on arrests. You have tactically delusions, rock, criminally foreign influence, whole careers since founding that country. Oh, but it's a career. Get down. See, we have to get them off pretending anyone spoke for the law legitimately. In other words, all exceptions in exception nature. And this breaching method, if we pay attention, those people in the houses, I mean, in the people stacking behind the rappers and rap videos, that was only allowed to unfold that way by the breaching method that designed the houses in Wethersfield before America's founders were born. The houses in Hartford that became 2- and 3-family houses. Then they mix in little apartments. And describe themselves as suburban / urban, as they should. But tactical ulterior from how our founders communicated for us, they communicated about it. The founding locations, they have other communicated for James Madison, his plan, the founders behind him in it. They have other communicated for George Washington's extortion that we were told to communicate about. Yeah, you guys know our lighting us be honest about George Washington's extortion. You want to quiz us about things that happened after. because you have not real principles treatments, because you were child abused at campuses A through Z. So you guys don't know how to defend the flag, because you guys don't know how to defend black people's rights of life. But you can by listening to YouTuber Anthony Wall. Because I listen to you, I know you guys can know a lot more than me, and I can learn from you. It's not about who's this or that. It's about the hyper invisible, hyper additionally. We all have to help. We all have to force that quality of fact-cheating nature that you guys are preventing. You guys can't fathom it, capable of being as leaders, let alone together. But you could through pantheism / hyper-pantheism, designed to make sure we're not using the ism, because the ism is invisible but still discernible. It's not true always. As that identity is the difference between as the finite or the order of the finite, the active grouped as itself, distinct from that. And it is showing us the value of seasons that are not even here yet. It's showing us its identity to an extent, its identity of relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that equally for what equality is about. See, we have been about systems tactical terror from its own, the identity of the hyper difference that has us shown these eyes of the birds, the fish, ourselves. We didn't invent how all these species bodies have these quiet aspects of nature, distinct from ourselves, but non-distinct and simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous. That distinct identity of hyper-simultaneous nature. And I'm using this since before hypersonic missiles became the subject. I'm thinking back in the 80s, we should have learned that there was a Chevy Chase was in a movie and tried to teach us about how there's nuclear war in Russia and America. Had to figure out a better way. Many pray, in other words, vaccines. But that's like the extent of the seriousness, or the suits and ties, and just pretending serious. Because when it comes down to it, when people are supposed to speak about, we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged and explain why and how, and understand why and how. Countries A through Z won't let us, because ourselves too won't let ourselves. There's a hyper foreign that keeps other things, others, ourselves blamed. Otherwise, that body is sensed, and that is adapted to, including if that body is a majority of people, including if that body is an entire country. Any grouping of countries, while the locations, areas, and states still self-value, suits, ties, counters, exceptions, suburbs designed before America's founders were born, little to the same, designed to cause negative value, nature, progression, acts, nature. We can't understand this unless we appreciate the breaching method against countries A through Z, differences A through Z, only allowed to stay entrenched. Oh, because that's why we have to study war, the phenomenon of war. If everyone wanted to do that legitimately, you don't leave out the predicate acts and facts methods. The prisons are already entrenched. That's not. There's no genius there. Those are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, collusion / S increasingly with all kinds of natures of crime scenes and next to them, right where the news goes to now. All kinds of predicate acts with facts methods. And they want and need to be called names to pretend it's to screen other foreign roles and the federal. The FBI has roles in whiting forensics through time. Since before I was alive, there are proofs. And with news. Connecticut's WFSB, Channel 3 News, increasingly has roles with whiting forensics, with names with the campuses, intercities, who are further involved with people next to Fox Connecticut News, too. And with WTNH, is next to them is the FBI. and they're the ones further involved with the Twitter upskirt pictures. And see, these online platforms, they work with the regular police forms, and they can change what's recorded. They already were shown they recorded themselves with criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw readings of statutes and precedents, and of exceptions, and as exception nature as criminal insidiousness, but like hyper criminally foreign influence too. All kinds of predicate acts with facts rules with people that are preventing others' voices and changing and faking what they say and what they think about what they say. In other words, I asked many times to get the Weatherfield police on paper, including with the courts too and their sources. And I already told you I know about the mayors, all that. So they shouldn't hide. In other words, and I want a response to the principal child abuser's confessions and demonstrations and the more names he brought up. Increasingly, people tied to a Michael Levine. I never had a word of conversation with a Michael Levine. They were our people involved with the World Trade Center attack and some intercultural rackets with people from different cultures and countries and sexual and medical location differences roles and pretending passions and emotions roles where there is mass behavior racketeering. See, these judges have been involved with all kinds of medicines crimes and as torture roles and all kinds of corruption of the regular healthcare as their role speaking in delusions of fake things and records, changing and faking digital evidences as collusions with all natures of crime scenes and with a whole bunch of different countries with their family members and overt criminal enterprises at once. They're trying to pretend they're legitimately with unmarked police forms, with the Los Solitos and the people next to Hartford Hospital through time, involved with this Demorals Market, Ilo's Kitchen, and a Mile family, and their roles at campuses with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Increasingly has something to do with the roles with conjunctions, with roads and routes. And they're leaking this because that's what ties them all. That's what's recorded. The intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have people on the sides of the parks with federal evidence of these crimes, with intelligence families from Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, that have been putting fake things on all sides of my house and at campuses I went to behind my back. And that's why they painted themselves in corners also with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts and the news at the same time involved with predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders. That's why they can't afford to have discerned what American history is about. It's because that's what it's about against every single person and our founders. They have our founders' communications changed. This preaching method measures and maintains styles, needs, and natures of logic using their words, leaving out what they communicated about how they didn't have a whole bunch of ways it's recorded. They didn't have free speech because the breaching method was entrenched, and everyone was sensing it. Roles with everyone pretending they didn't have free speech too because of the nature of the breaching method, laws, and rolls with it being and having been only remembered. Otherwise, that body would be sensed. Otherwise, even if it was a majority of people, even if it was everyone, that would be adapted to. In other words, and it made that invested that more and more, reliant upon that, needs to keep nature's actual demonstrations to ourselves, blamed on other things other than ourselves, until it is real. Worse than they did, the young men and women, or the old men and women that were put in jail at New York City, like, for example, or in other words, clearer than day, the suburbs have a breaching method, a predicate acts with facts method against them. And they are forcing the wrong outcome /S with every nature of case as collusion /S. When did someone speak with passions and emotions to defend how honest people spoke for the sciences, through the sciences for New York City, for Hartford, Connecticut, for the founding locations in Wethersfield, Connecticut? Can't even afford to have discerned properly the suburbs, free speech. because everyone has styles of natures of logic reliant upon what is trained tactical terror from communications from James Madison's communications and our founders before there was even one president. Before that's what got George Washington. He agreed to help them in that plan. James Madison wasn't even a president yet. And when he was a president, he still didn't have free speech. They forced trick us all to persuade us all to pretend to blame things like tea taxes. This is why people aren't doing their homework. The homework's not led by principles that aren't criminally foreign influence, that they're by natures. The homework's not allowing people to appreciate how nature actually properly works, per description proper. Psychiatry is criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought takes on American history on principles, on the value of math. Please, President Trump, get them on paper, one name and sequence. I'll show you. I'll delineate their tactical, their criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quiet aspects and natures from their delusions for everybody. Everybody will learn and heal and will heal. The people, the religions have been defending them. It's not just tactical terror from how they asked to be defended for the sequence value of it. I'm not saying that for actual facts. Beginning of the Old Testament, for example, says, I'm not saying someone has to believe in the Old Testament or whatever. Saying the beginning of the Old Testament says, for science law, it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's before the part with Adam and Eve and the tree of life and knowledge of good and evil. But so people can't be honest or allow that into the fact human nature, debate, or logic. How could they afford to have a legitimate, they'll call it legitimate debate or science regarding the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Knowledge of good and evil is inseparable from where it says, from it saying, only defend right here where the names of the people of sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And so, in other words, we are not being allowed to appreciate that. And offensively, there are people with pretending passions, emotions, and hurting people with their religion so they can then pretend that they perceive hate as sequence shifts. As people rose with the World Trade Center attack, too, who have sequence shift self-value with the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, next to the World Trade Center. That self-value rules, names that change and fake the words, and the value of the court, the order of the court, no. Right before the World Trade Center attack, long-term, short-term, and since, too, they've been stacking predicate acts with Connecticut news locations and their sources. And with the FBI and the courts, they have people with Wethersfield police involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And these are increasingly people at Harvard Hospital, no. But these are people tied to other hospitals with the same ones involved with the security there and all kinds of legal scams. They have lawyers involved personally, professionally in their campuses. There's ones from UConn involved also with students, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and pretend they're just real legitimate people trying to learn. They're involved changing and faking audio and video at Harvard Hospital. UConn's got all kinds of scams with Social Security, more than the, in other words, they're charging these people for fake health care. And as collusion /S with all kinds of natures of organized crimes. It's why and how all these different crimes intercities were brought up at the same time, and with the phenomenon of connections between the people that made confessions to me, also in the role of statements with that, including this is former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and depositions, including ones with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, involved with Hartford courts, with people that involved with identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, with a house next to a school on New Park Avenue. That's also involved with foreign and domestic military, and people with child abusers, with courts involved, including sexual and medical offenders of little kids, with Alina's Pizza, through their roles with other natures of organized crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders, with people next to the campuses that are connected to ones on my street, involved with this Lena's Pizza through time, with child abusers, with Weathersfield campuses, with a Daryl Sullivan, involved with people with the name Magdalena and Maggie, and others with spots next to Central Connecticut State University involved with them. I don't even know all their names. There's an Elena Davenport and a Heather Hansen that the intelligence community also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Detective Samuda, also with federal crimes with federal agencies in foreign countries and military, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and black-white female judges involved with these games, also male judges and prosecutors and their family members and victims advocates involved planting fake things in databases and fake motivations for it, and refusing paper, and putting fake motivations, using real motivations to screen worse, and using them fake, using truths for lies. So it is important to get them on paper. These are the same ones. They have readings of statutes. Oh, that's one. It's different if it's said online. They're leaving out exceptions. These are people putting predicate acts for facts in databases at courts. Connecticut's district court is increasingly involved with people at Fox Connecticut News and next to it, with predicate acts in my street, with people from other areas. And they will increasingly record, confess, demonstrate, confirm involved with people with Two Rod Highway and Hang Dog Lane in their conjunctions involved with the state judicial branch offices and conjunctions to it. And so please, Judge Napolitano, they've been using the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie. And they're using the map. Joe Dennis has roles with the mayors involved with a field across the street from West Farmers Mall in West Hartford. And there's a religious spot near there. And the street, I forgot the name of the street there, that Eric Burgess and his family's relationships and the narratives by their roles with the leaders of the church too, is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretending passions and emotions. And they're right next to a child campus and a fire campus there. That's also involved with multiple fire departments, family members. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Covington Street with multiple owners of that building and people who worked for that building on Covington Street in the Britain next to Central Connecticut State University. Also through time involved with people out of the state judicial branch and offices and corrections offices who have been planting wire crimes with intelligence families that grew up with near me, that planted fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Also increasingly with people from other areas that planting evidence of fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, with them on my street, and sequence shifts with them. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, no, because they're also some black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, Latino themed, Italian themed, time collusion with falsified police, including the police department, with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Fake conversation, fake me being there as a kid and then as an adult, like with these Mendez ones. Also with not just with the Weathersfield Police Department, as ones at Fox Connecticut News and next to them, and the ones with the other places involved. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence: Judge Napolitano and President Chief and Elon Musk. I'll show you watch how many doctors are involved, all kinds of natures of organized crime, religious, nutbags involved with including a Danielle Perron and a Kerr family involved with religious nutbags. Sexual and medical offenders of kids next to Fox Connecticut News has something to do with their roles with people next to campuses involved with identity theft and their educators. I never had a class with them, and their roles with the people at Hartford Hospital next to it, like with a Mark Violet, and know how that girl was reportedly dragged to her death. Even if that was made up, that girl has roles with the Mark Violet and Mike Violet with that spot she was reportedly dragged from, and with the spot she was dropped off at. No, next to the golf course as one of the three spots at the end of the Bone Turnpike. Increasingly, a Sandra Spot and others tied to a Ray Cololo, like a Jonathan Maiano, but a Sandra Spot. I never saw John Mallow there, but he brought it up. Three spots at the end of the Bone Turnpike. He too has roles with that, and their roles with a Ray Cololo and with Eric Oliveri and people with the name Violet all along Elm Streets in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill. A bunch of people I don't know tied to them, involved with putting predicate acts with facts in the databases I went to, with their family members, with people on my street putting sequence shifts, fake ties, and fake natures of ties to me roles. They have roles with a Joshua Julian on the Facebook page of a principal digital offender of kids on off shopping centers and malls and next to them, and with the campuses, with the security families, the families, not just the security guards themselves. They are further involved with the Michael Emmett and the Board of Education and names next to it too. At the same time, with overt criminal enterprises and murders brought up by intercities, as what brought up the campus to me, and I still don't have a response to the principal's confessions and the rest of the people involved with other natures of organized crimes and the wire crimes with them. There's also people with the name. There's a guy with the name Poison, an officer Poison, also involved with all kinds of sick. He's a sick, demented guy with delusions too, with digital crimes, changing and faking digital evidences, with child sex offenders. Watch these. There are women involved with the police forms, switching and forging names, and involved with the kids, with the mental health care at Rocky Hill too, involved with this. I don't know their names. But there's a Mayano family, and there's a DeMorro's Market with a Paul DeMorro, a John DeMorro, and others involved with this, a Tony DeMorro, with the town lines, and the people next to Hartford Hospital involved with intercities with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and wire crimes, like with these Mendez police involved also with the Saudi attackers, with people named Spada, where they forced the Saudis' roles, and the Americans forced roles too, with other natures of collusions. Here and there, our country's names are used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. That's why people are fighting with the flag. You guys are only giving them you aren't giving them the means to defend the Constitution unabridged and to appreciate why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. Or what amendment? And people want to play smartass. So in other words, we need names like Badios. We need Babadialos is positive. And then you say Badios, don't be a Badios. And we're all supposed to go, oh, like that's a bad swear. But now it's no longer a bad thing. Like, but we could get that emphatic in there. Because people increasingly since founding at all locations, areas, and states, they've been saying things, doing things, and faking behavior to keep covered up how all sides of criminal and civil cases of the worst natures and the crime scenes and the difference of the interbranch, the difference of their guilt was used remotely too. Predicate acts with facts, there are uses of it where they're communicating tactical other than they pretend when they influence people to say things with time when this person walks there. There are increasingly connections between people who did that with the ones personally and professionally involved, criminally, as criminals who aren't police, with the police to attach me to fake conversations with themselves and with others, who have collusions too. In the Britain Superior Court, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed too. There's a Eric Mendez involved with this. His older brother's also involved with the people with predicate action with the Wethersfield Police Department with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake conversation with me, falsified police reports. Also, Bob Chase recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Phil Colo involved with that with them. In other words, so Joshua Julian too is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed all along Route 3. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people with the corners of it. Joe DeMauro, Heather Hansen, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that federal evidence his crimes along Route 175 has something to do with their roles, with home break-ins in the area with different people too. I don't know if Joe DeMauro knew about one of them. And they have wire crimes with the police, though, and other natures of organized crimes with them, and child abuses, and identity thefts and fraud, slanders. Mr. Pruzzi is also one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with sexual and medical offenders in Wethersfield Police through time, and the courts involved the wrong way. Many pray. So let's get one thing on paper. You guys can't, if you want things to be short, concise words, let's go. Let's get the interbranch on paper, one name and sequence. Then we'll get to the other criminal enterprises involved in the foreign countries. These are Afghan leaders of kids involved increasingly with people on Zion Street, and too with tied to the boxing gyms, like with Johnny Duke, the dinosaur of boxing. In other words, my neighbors have roles with identity theft, fraud, slander, like with this Joe Aiello too. People next to Harvard Hospital with the fire department too, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, planting evidences. A whole bunch of people tied to it. Joe Aiello, I don't even know all their names. They know my name. With the fire departments and with the foreign, with Russian and Ukrainian families involved with identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts with these people, with the Joe Aiello and others, with this former Mayor Gold and tied to them. And they're educated. Their roles putting predicate acts of facts in databases. We need to get them on paper, one name and sequence. Increasingly, people with the name Burstein involved with New Britain Central Connecticut State University through time, involved with abuses of kids, involved with various natures of poisons roles, including like with mold, and people involved with crimes with smoke, their roles with fire department families, too, with putting fake transcripts in databases, forging names of doctors' roles, including all kinds of scams at Harvard Hospital, stealing money from Social Security, from all these systems. They're, in other words, they're putting all kinds of scams in the lawyers too, UConn too. Get them on paper. Get them on paper with the Violet family too, please. This Leahy family. Get me off the fake conversations with them and with WFSB. Attach me to fake conversations with them, with others. They're trying to have me speak with my family. They attach my family to fake and changed communications with me, with them. And they want to make me speak as a group with them. They attached my family to changed communications. And part of my family was in the World Trade Center. And in the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to, in a hotel, in other spots next to the World Trade Center, right before the attack. And it was proven after the attack there had been sequence shifting from inside the Ninth Circuit Court. That proven led up to a 2006 district court part of a case in Connecticut. That was in Manhattan, though, but in New York. But this is in Connecticut in 2006. Right after Thaddeus Grabowski recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and Allison Mulcahy non-verbally did. The first time she ever was close to her, even. And I had not a word of conversation with her. And non-verbally, she's involved with some Domain family members and with people named Eric Mendez and his brother, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, and abuses sexually and medically of boys and girls in my area, men and women, even with rape threats, with New Britain Superior Court, the same ones involved through time, with Eric Oliveri, with wire crimes, identity thefts, and frauds, behind my back with my teachers, putting fake things in databases with UPS. UPS recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has foreign and domestic intelligence associated with people all along involved with the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence with people that live near me as the ones involved with that, with the fake conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and then as an adult, as the ones increasingly involved with the work criminal enterprises and private ones, increasingly with Eric Oliveri and Justin, a Joshua Stryker. I never saw a Joshua Stryker at the corner of Grizzle Street and Fairlane Drive, but increasingly people confessed him and Eric Oliveri and a Craig Oliveri and a Matt Olson and Eric Olson and an Eric Mark Violet and a Mike Violet involved with planting evidences with intelligence families near me by having them repeat fake things and sequence shifts as people who have been putting predicate acts with facts in databases, people I never had campus classes with, that have been putting collusions with that into databases, and with the people that won't identify themselves legitimately into branch. This is how they leak things too, and pretend not to realize. So please get them onto paper, one name and sequence. Let's go.